you're in Teams, your ability to access OneDrive files and folders is more intuitive as well. So like right inside of Teams, in a team, you can actually add a shortcut to a OneDrive, which may be confusing to some, but I've absolutely noticed that there's a lot of companies who are confused about OneDrive and Teams. And so often there's a folder for the team because that's where that person stores their stuff. And so your ability to pin a folder for a team is possible. So you can get direct access to OneDrive through Teams. You don't have to open up OneDrive. This people-centric, essentially you can pin people. You know, when you're on a team, there's some teams work together as a team. I've noticed a lot of matrix-based organizations where just because you report to the same person doesn't necessarily mean that's your team. So essentially you can kind of pin people and then even browse and see recent files based on who it is you're actually relating to, and being able to see kind of a feed based on the people pinning. As well, you'll notice that browsing by meetings. So a lot of the times it's like, oh, I remember that person shared a file. You don't remember the name of the file, but you remember the person. So there's that ability to kind of navigate and search and discover based on people. Microsoft Lens has some updates. This ability to use interactive text, being able to pull data out of screenshots or camera views, capturing notes, and copying and pasting across platforms. It's interesting, you know, when iOS started getting those capabilities, now it's incorporated into Lens. New Office app called Microsoft Designer. This is an interesting one. I haven't spent much time with this one yet, but I think the coolest part was in the keynote where they started talking about the cake baker who was trying to put together their media and offerings, and essentially it's integrated with AI with Dolly, where essentially he could say, I'm looking for a cake with an autumn theme, and then it has suggested images, and then he's able to kind of choose his look from that and auto-generating images. So instead of going to the internet and searching for images, and then pretty much everything is someone else owns it, having AI generating something for you on the fly, much better from a trademark perspective, but pretty cool too. Super powerful. And this concept of being able to use the designer to build your designs, I think it takes us further in that way too, that we can, you don't have to be a hardcore designer to be able to build stuff. You can essentially be able to build fairly interesting designs for your slides or for your media, banners and things like that. From a sharing perspective, this is something I've been wanting for a long time. I'm working on something and I want to share it. I don't want to just share to email. Being able to share to a Teams chat or a Teams channel, and being able to control the link settings in a much more intuitive way. So no matter where I am through Office, the ability, and here we are even in a slide deck, and I want to be able to share it with Teams. And you'll notice as well, you'll see whether they call it Yammer or whether it'll have the Viva Engage icon, we should see that path as well. This kind of goes back to the work that was put into Microsoft Designer. A lot of that was actually put into Azure OpenAI. So there's the Azure Cognitive Services and Azure OpenAI with this work that was designed around being able to generating images or custom text or based on custom text. And then on the Azure Cognitive Services side, being able to use natural speech to be able to then describe what you want to be able to do with code, or being able to do translation. A lot of that work that you're going to see in a lot of products that we're going to be covering are essentially work that was done in Azure. So there's a ton of services around translation, text to speech, and speech recognition and understanding. Anyway, there's a lot of AI work that was essentially done to support a lot of the features that are built into these cloud products, and Microsoft's essentially opening those up from a perspective of being able to use those models. A new app called Clipchamp. Anybody use that yet? Yeah, me too. That is one you can download on your phone right now. Clipchamp will allow you to, say you just took a video, your ability to then take two clips, bring them together, crop them, work with them, add text, add media, music, being able to do that right inside of Clipchamp. And you can imagine as well, as we think about this from a Viva Engage perspective, from storylines, or whether you're talking about being able to share it on Teams. So being able to make quick, simple messages. Hey, I'm going to be out of office, and I'm going to Bali, and here's my. Let me bring in some stuff from Bali to make everybody jealous. Yeah. The last kind of set of things, and I didn't necessarily find a lot of images for these particular things, but I think they're definitely worth calling out. The Azure Forms Recognizer, which is in preview, using a pre-built AI model, automatically extracts content such unique to contracts such as parties and payment terms, and supports 275 languages. So that's pretty wild. There's a lot of stuff in syntax that the new Microsoft syntax that essentially is this idea that I can actually fill out forms or generate documents based on list data. So a lot of wild stuff from that perspective of document generation. AI dashboards, AI scorecards, GitHub, advanced security, where it can detect open source dependencies and actually analyze the code. A lot of cool stuff there. Visual Studio 2022 is now generally available. Again, this is a little bit miscellaneous, but I like this feature in Outlook. When we were talking to Stephen, I was thinking about company communication. He was talking about there's still a decent population that still use email. I don't know that I'm really a Gen Z, but I probably only check email probably once a day these days. I don't know that much happens in email, but your ability to, you don't want to create DLs anymore. How about your ability to actually select departments and then generate an email across? So it's here's AI jumping in saying, hey, you've just added a bunch of users. You could send this to that department instead. So essentially this AI recommendations, but also this ability to audience targeting an email, I think that's pretty foundational. You know, if you're a department head or you want to be able to send things in a dynamic way, you don't want them to be based on a DL that hasn't been being maintained. So this ability to select departments, select locations. I'm sure there's other metadata like not finding your audience, upload a CSV right there, boom. You're be able to send content, not just to, anyway. So it kind of does the logic on the back end, and you use metadata. You could say, we want all PMs to know that they should shorten their meetings by 5 minutes. Now I can target PMs and send a message out to my PMs. Pretty sweet. We talked a lot about Loop, a little bit about Loop anyway, with Steven's stuff. Loop itself gets MIP labels, so the sensitivity labels. It also goes from today, I think you can do it in Teams chat, and you can do it in OneDrive. It's expanding to Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, the whiteboard. So that ability to being able to kind of work across different places to be able to do that. And there's some additional enhancements I think I've got here too. well, we'll come back to that. Anyway, this is the adaptive card loop component, where even a third party like SAP can actually build out these action cards, these adaptive cards. And there's a ton of work around this idea of the adaptive cards and adaptive card designers in the Power Platform. Ryan's going to be talking about Power Platform as soon as we get to that point. The sensitivity labels, being able to apply those and DLP to loop components as well, coming soon to Teams chat. Right now, when you're doing loop components, essentially I forget the extension, but it's basically a loop file that's in your OneDrive. Remember the extension?
I forget. It used to be .loop.
Right. You have some? Yeah. But you can see there's a watermark as well, your ability to watermark and add sensitivity labels to loop components. One of the, especially for a SharePoint audience or those who kind of come from that world, those who think about content services, the Microsoft Syntax session actually contained quite a bit around where syntax has gone, but also a lot around the admin and governance around SharePoint itself. So syntax, if you've thought about it in the past, you kind of thought about it compartmentalized into SharePoint, where it's moved outside of SharePoint, where now it's Microsoft syntax. And it interacts with Azure, Purview, Power Platform, and Microsoft 365. And from a stack perspective, this kind of helps you understand where it is in stack as a interface backed by search and graph and Purview and the Power Platform. Where even further deeper, we've got Azure and Graph and SharePoint from a storage perspective. It's interesting to see that. Here we are looking at a form, and you're going to see a bunch of Microsoft Syntax features. One of the ones you see on the right is this ability to summarize a file. So here we're actually getting AI summaries of a really large document. It's a 12-page document, but essentially right on the screen, we can get nice file summary and then hop right to that portion of the document. So you can imagine if you're somebody who's doing a lot of searching and looking through large documents, your ability to be able to get a summary and get these nice file summaries without affecting the document itself. It doesn't have to edit anything. It's just giving you these nice summaries where you can then jump to a particular section of the document, even if it doesn't have an index, as an example. The other thing you'll notice here is this, there's the Get Summary button. There's also this Send for Signature. So signatures was a major investment as well, where there's syntax signatures, but also Adobe Sign integration, as well as DocuSign, exactly. So if you already have those licenses, being able to bring those right in. So one of the other things that was an interesting announcement was related to document translation. So you think about, there's all this content we've got, but it's in Croatian or it's in Japanese. Our ability to say, generate, auto detect the language, selected a bunch of them, and we want to translate it to English, or maybe it's a French company and they want to make all their documents available in French and English. Right on the fly, being able to translate the documents and actually generate new documents with just an extension on the back of it, or just a _en or something like that. Pretty powerful.
How is that with syntax? The different languages interpret different words differently, right? So how accurate is that actually?
As good as the AI.
Dot fluid.
Huh?
Dot fluid.
Dot fluid.
Soon to be dot fluid.
Yeah, there you go. So that was in relation to what is the file extension of the loop file? Dot fluid. Yeah, that's what it used to be called, the code name. So in relation to your comment or question about the languages, I do think that, so a few years ago, automated translation was probably as good as a fourth grader or something like that. Now it's college level, they say. So it's come quite a ways. And they obviously they think it's good enough to say that it's worth generating actual full documents in multiple languages. So it's interesting, you know, in practice, it'd be interesting. I think that when you start talking about making large portions of content in multiple, you know, in other languages, if they're they're generated and now you're consuming those, yeah, what kind of feedback is your audience going to give you? I think, anyway, it's probably worth a trial.
For me, the experience I have is that usually you go a certain way with the automation, but then you always need somebody some manual work to finish it. And
Sure.
it's true for translation. It's also true for transcription of videos, for example, same.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of that fit and finish of, you know, we work in fairly diverse communities now where I think a number of years ago, we probably would have been a little bit more hardcore about, you know, punctuation and there's probably certain processes where it's like, summarize what they're trying to say. You know, the summaries that AI can generate is kind of what we're looking for anyway. Is this the right content? And then going back to the original document if we have to. But being able to have access to that content and it being generated on the fly, like say in chats, I've noticed in Yammer as an example, I'm in a few forums where it's primarily Japanese, and I click the translate, and it gives me the gist of it. It may not be 100% correct, or even 95% correct, but that ability to be able to get the gist of the message often from some of this perspective is helpful. Like if it's, hey, this is a benefits document, yeah, you're going to go through the proper channels to make sure that it is much more proper for going to an end user. But if it's like, this is a customer contract and we want everybody to be able to read it, so we're going to generate it in all 6 languages of the company. Maybe there's still the official contract, and then these other ones are generated just for readability, that kind of thing. But it's, yeah, interesting how this is going. We've been thinking, you know, we have a lot of meetings with Japanese and English, and that ability to have, like we'll have translators. Imagine having a translator on all these calls, where if we could just simply turn on those abilities, and I think we're getting close to that ability to be able to do that, be able to have someone speaking in Japanese and it showing up in the transcription and being able to see it right there where the people who are listening can actually flip it. The meetings themselves will probably take half the time. And I think we're getting close to that. Like today, I think there's a lot of those really sensitive meetings that, you know, you want to have the translator. But being able to get to that level where we can actually see it is pretty interesting. So here we are looking at a syntax generated, or the library that has syntax on it. There's a model applied to it, and you can kind of see the classify and extract, automate buttons, that ability to generate documents based on models, based on lists data, as an example. It also gives us that enhanced metadata search. So that's a new feature. We're looking at a list, and so search itself knows we're looking at a list. And so because we populated a bunch of these columns, we have the ability to filter based on date, or search based on file type or manufacturer or region on the fly. Pretty powerful. Annotations is another one. Our ability to actually annotate on a PDF and do inking without modifying the document. So that without actually having to impact the document itself. This AI-based search using natural language processing and deep learning being able to get answers from the AI. So you say, how many solar panels will require, an American house will require 36, or how many solar panels do we need for a typical house? And apparently there's a document that it found that answer. Typical American house require 14 to 36 solar panels. So it's coming from some fact sheet. So that, like you've seen, I think that, being able to provide answers from Wikipedia, the same kind of thing using AI to actually understand content and being able to provide answers. What that'll look like in practice, I think is going to be interesting, as AI starts understanding content, understanding learning. Obviously, it's getting to a level where they're building the future. So I think that's pretty interesting. Some stuff around syntax, the structured document processing models, the unstructured document processing models, and content assembly is available now. What's coming is the translation, the OCR, image tagging, summarization features, and translation features. At the end of that particular session, there's some stuff around governance. Now, what wasn't clear was how much of those were coming from syntax. Is there an additional license? Where did those things come from? But what I thought was really interesting is if you go into the SharePoint Admin Center in this future state, it's showing how much free space you can get by managing your inactive sites. That's pretty clever, being able to say, hey, if you free up your inactive sites, you could actually save 600 gigabytes. So some of the features that are coming with this kind of SharePoint admin based governance, there's some site attestation, data governance where you can actually manage oversharing, permissions validation where it's like, hey, can you attest that you're still managing this site? There's some new archiving features, and that's one that I actually want to dive into. One particular pain point I've noticed, there's some companies who are like, yeah, SharePoint storage is cheap until you actually use it all up, and then it gets super expensive. So one of the features that Microsoft's giving here, and I'm not sure how it's going to deliver it, but you can actually see in the screenshot, 90% of storage is used, 0% of archive storage used. Imagine the ability to actually hook up Azure and then push content into the archive. So I thought that's a killer feature in my opinion. Being able to push backup and restore and archiving features now right into the admin center. Definitely something pretty key. Like somebody just told me I shouldn't say that. Anyway, there's a ton of massive loads of data that if we're considering shutting down this other environment, bringing it in would absolutely blow up the environment. But if we were to say, oh, but we're going to turn on lifecycle management and we're going to turn on Azure and start archiving into Azure, then maybe it's actually doable. Some references to more details on the syntax announcements.
But Joel, how do you get the syntax? Are you?
Microsoft syntax?
Yeah.
Part
of Office 365.
Separate license.
It is separate licensing.
Separate license, so you have to like.
There's a whole section called content services. So it's like activating those features, and you can turn on a trial for 30 days. Or you can actually license your users for it, and you can license a portion of your audience.
You know what the price is?
$4 a user.
That's what it is saying.
For $40.
Are you guys using it?
Then you have to pay for consumption as well.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Even if you're doing a lot of translation and AI.
SharePoint syntax was askew for the last 2 years and nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
So now that it's, Microsoft syntax, it's.
Yeah. I would say that they've put a lot of juice in Microsoft syntax. Yeah, I think it's going to come back around. Absolutely. Like a lot of these features they built are much more broad and deep.
Like Cortex.
Yeah. So Cortex was again a code name, the old code name. So we ended up with Viva Topics. Viva Topics, Syntax becomes Microsoft Syntax. So they've really ended up in two different buckets. Yeah. Everybody heard of Microsoft Edge, the little browser? They've added some security features to it, including this ability to actually have shared set of tabs and being able to do collaboration. There's some security enhancements around, hey, these are the apps you're using. And we can tell that those are the ones you are very familiar and you're comfortable with, and we're gonna let you do what you need to do. But hey, this is a place you haven't ever been. We're gonna actually dynamically have more hardened security. So the idea is unfamiliar places you're visiting, it'll by default be more restrictive. So it's trying to do the right thing. That's kind of that security posture. But as well, this idea of collaboration on tabs. So you can have sets of tabs that you're managing. So I know we talked a ton about Teams, so I'm just going to step through, see if there's anything we missed. This is the UI for the mesh avatars, which I think is kind of cool. You get 3 mesh avatars.
There are avatar designers.
In fact, there's the avatar reactions when he was laughing and hearting and liking. It's those things there, the video effects. And basically, to get your mesh avatar, you have to go into this app, mesh avatars, generate your avatars, and then you'll see it in the dropdown of effects and avatars to be able to choose which avatar you're using for the meeting. And he talked about intelligent recap in Teams. This is kind of what an intelligent meeting looks like, where the meeting is happening, but we've got some meeting notes. It's actually suggesting tasks on the fly. So it's actually people who are in the meeting could be adding tasks and they can be adding agenda items, but we also have the notes. And you can see it's connected to a OneNote that this person is managing, and whether it's secure or locked or has sensitivity labels on it. Pretty powerful. So you miss this meeting, but you can see the notes, the agenda, and some of these things are actually generated by AI. So it's.
Just to be clear, you said notes and OneNote and not feature of Teams, right?
Well, if we look there, it does say meeting notes right on the top of it. And then it says open in OneNote right underneath it. So that's what I was looking at.
Full.
Does it look like those worlds are coming together?
It does, yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah. Impressive.
Yeah. I'm already sold on Teams Premium.
Yeah.
I think we need it. I want it now.
Well, the idea of creating tasks during a meeting is pretty cool too, because that's.
Yeah. Well, think about this.
In the meeting, because you forget, you gotta go out and sign.
Here's a suggestion. It says this task was pulled from meeting transcript at 1:12 by Adi Rapport. So it's suggesting that you just said Adi Rapport will check on incoming shipments. Oh yeah, that is a task. We want Adi to follow up.
Just click on it to create a task,
No, just accept it.
or just accept, that's the suggestion.
It's a suggestion from AI. Yeah,
Well, where do the tasks sit? Your Outlook?
to do
Do. It's gonna be something.
tasks by planner in Teams.
So I see this pop up in Outlook from time to time, content based.
Viva Insights.
Same thing.
So Viva Insights will say, hey, you said that you were going to send the attachment and you never sent the attachment. I get those kinds all the time.
Sounds like it's.
And it's like, oh yeah, I need to send the attachment. Or it's, hey, you said you would follow up with that person. I haven't noticed any messages from you following up. Is this, do you want me to add this to your to-dos or as a reminder? So yeah,
But I
let's
think
get
the where
inspired.
was the question. I think it is planned.
Planner seems like a stretch to me. To do makes sense, or
Okay.
maybe tasks by planner, as in the section. Huh? What was that?
Planner, it does.
Because tasks by plan, I thought tasks by planner replaced plan.
No, planner still exists. So think of planner in the context of a team. So your team can have plans, or you can go and what I would, it's probably not an appropriate word, but I call them naked plans, where they're not connected to a team.
Gotcha.
But for the most part, plans should actually be connected to the context of a team.
Most of the time I'm using lists, I'm not using lists to me are more powerful.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about, it's kind of like, there is a hierarchy here, where you start with like the lowest thing is a task. Task belongs to a plan. Plans belong to a project or a team. And who knows how tightly connected those are. And then you go up and those projects belong to the PMO, Project Plan 3, which belongs to Project Plan 5, where you've got your whole organization and being able to view your resourcing plans and your, all that kind of, the PMO stuff. Whether it actually realistically rolls up that way is another concept. All right, so we did see a little bit of Excel live. This is kind of it in practice. You've got a bunch of people, you open up Excel, and you can have multiple people working on the Excel, even if they don't have Excel on their desktop. In the meeting, they can be populating the cells of an Excel live. So it's essentially multiple people being able to work on the same Excel document in a meeting.
You have it on your desktop.
You don't even have to have Excel,
Well, they even have in the screenshot, there's even on a phone.
even on a phone.
We see Steven's mug in the bottom there.
Yeah, there's Steve.
So you open it from like OneDrive, possibly.
No.
It opens in the team meeting.
You're in Teams.
We have to have the file somewhere to open.
Well, the file, just like probably like PowerPoint Live,
It's like
the file
PowerPoint.
has to be stored either in SharePoint or OneDrive, but then Teams just loads in your Teams client is what's surfacing those edits.
Yeah.
Are you able to say who can make edits and who can't? Like, that's incredible.
With-
I'm sure he's got.
Basically, if you're sharing the Excel in Teams Live,
Everybody,
it's for your meeting. Yeah.
There's gotta be some conflict.
Well, I'm also, they're sure the security is probably set up that if they don't have access to that file, they're not gonna get those options in Teams either.
Well, and as well, you think about PowerPoint Live, one of the features we don't really use is the ability that people can actually click on the links. So essentially, users are interacting with the PowerPoint. People don't know that they can with PowerPoint Live, but essentially it does end up bringing some of that all the way through. I think that's not the live essence.
Do they have the Microsoft Word live?
Not
Are they
yet.
doing
There's
contracts?
more of these live things
You can see
coming.
like working out a contract.
Sure. And you think loop kind of brings those worlds together a little bit, where it's like being able to do a loop in a meeting or in a chat, assigning tasks as an example right through the loop. It does make things much more lively.
Once it's not, it's just chat.
Once it starts in chat, it's no longer in chat even.
No, but the loop in Word, or like loop in Word, or PowerPoint,
What we haven't seen yet is the loop pages. So we've got loop components. Loop pages are still coming. They didn't talk about them at Ignite, but loop pages are still coming.
that'd be
We need containers,
right.
because then you can actually have the tabs of the components, organize those components. Yeah. He talked about Cameo. I think we need to talk about PowerPoint Live per se. I don't think I saw him cover together mode. Did we?
Yeah, we fooled around with that in the office just for fun.
So there's some,
It's not something that Steven discussed though.
No, we didn't discuss it.
yeah, so now with together, so together mode today, if you put it in together mode, just the person who's looking at it sees it. In this future together mode, the ability to turn on together mode, you can push it to everyone. And as well, you can do assigned seats and your own organizational based layouts, where if you're doing a panel, and I stole this from Ryan, you're doing a panel and you want to say, this is the moderator, and he's sitting in this kind of chair, and here's the panel, and they're all sitting in these nice couches. And then do assigned seats where it's like, we're gonna have the Google people together and the Microsoft people together or whatever. So you can essentially do assigned seating as well for your panel, for your scenes. So you got your speakers or your attendees and being able to mix it up. Polls for teams. This is actually something that has launched, but there's more investments in this. This ability today, you're in a Teams meeting and somebody can actually push the poll right through to your device, whether it's your phone or you're in Teams, and essentially you're getting the poll that says, how would you rank the priorities areas? So it's not even just multiple choice every time. Now we actually have different types of polling as well, where you can stack rank and then see the results of that poll. So there's a number of new call management sets of features from a telephony perspective. This ability to create some call answering rules, like, hey, when I'm actually in a meeting, play a busy signal, or let the call ring through to me, or redirect if it's unanswered, send it to my cell phone or whatever. But you can do delegation or forwarding and so on. So a number of different ways of dealing with call management.
Well, Joe, you think people are using that much? Because I heard from, customers, like, it isn't really a full-fledged PBX.
The cloud PBX,
Well, this whole Teams PBX needs to work.
it's come a ways. I think you'd be surprised how many, I think there's over 80 million users of
Yeah.
Teams.
Well,
I'm starting to-
I mean,
Teams calling has over 80 million users now.
PBX is like a component of how you could use Teams, but just think about replacing a via phone system with Teams.
Yeah,
That's the.
Well, that's about 90% of what I do, so, on the voice engineering, so.
it's come a long way in the last.
Yeah,
couple
it
years.
has, but about 98% of the installations are still direct routing.
so what?
Direct routing, they're using their on-prem voice gateways along with Teams.
Direct routing, yeah.
Direct routing, we'll see a lot of that. And there's really no answer for analog yet, I don't think there will be much of.
Yeah, it's soft.
Oh, come on, yeah, elevator. You get stuck in the elevator, you can say it's dead.
Different technology.
There's elevators, so there's alarm systems, there's gate openers. I can go on. and on.
Yeah, some of the 911 stuff,
Everything
yeah.
else.
Yeah, we've got E911, but we probably do want certain phones in certain types of locations.
Yeah.
I should say that's dead along with fax, but.
Yeah, there you go. Same camp.
You tell a real estate agency they don't do fax. They're actually getting more towards DocuSign.
DocuSign, absolutely.
A lot of medical.
About
stuff.
Yep. This is kind of interesting. When we start putting more and more of our salespeople into Teams and they start using Viva Sales and they're using Microsoft CRM or D365, imagine a lot of these are Teams calls. So now our ability to say, I'm calling up the customer and I want all these calls recorded. Now I've got my call history with the recordings and transcription of those calls, where AI could be learning from them and even making recommendations to the sales associates of what they should potentially bring up in those calls. Viva Sales, right?
I guess I'm trying to say, do you have a phone number that calls Teams?
Yes.
By regular old phone?
Yeah, you can do a number assignment.
That way it'll call Teams, it'll call your phone, it'll basically any of your devices you're sending to Teams, they call your actual 10-digit phone number and it rings right through.
But you still have to get the phone number from a provider. Like AT&T.
Yeah.
Yeah. You still have to do that part. Microsoft has some providing of numbers. So they have a batch. Now, if you want like your actual carrier got, they have
Operator, well, there's.
Operator
two
Connect.
things, your calling plans, Operator Connect, and now you have a new one called direct routing as a service.
Yeah.
But then there's the actual direct routing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
So there are a lot of different ways to get the call from a phone or regular PSTN into your Teams. However, works best for your organization. That's it. That you probably dealt with is you can choose which way you want to work that works for your
You
organization.
need new combinations. You can do direct routing with calling plans or mix and match. Just depending where the numbers.
Oh, Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
It's like
to
with
get
maps and stuff.
used to get to dialing up the phone, somebody.
It's like without, like putting all of that, all of the technicalities of how the call is routed. That at the end of the day, you're a user and you have Teams here, you have Teams here. Or you have it on a phone, a handset at your desk, and you
Yeah.
receive and make a call, just like you always have.
Even a handset.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, check out the, what we call old phones, but those are the new Teams phones up on the top right. It's like full-on Teams phones, but there's even Teams walkie-talkie, which was also mentioned at Ignite. I think it was mentioned last time, too.
Data connection, we have to have a data connection on your walkie-talkie or whatever.
So you can add the Teams walkie-talkie app
Oh,
on
oh,
your
your phone.
your personal phone,
Yeah.
but there's also Teams phones in the office where there's actually a Teams button even on the phones.
So that's the thing, it's going over your mic.
Yeah,
Right.
it's VoIP, yeah.
With walkie-talkie or their own
Yeah,
radio.
there are also team deck systems.
Well, it's like-
Nice for manufacturing.
So the Teams walkie-talkie is still IP based.
Yeah. I just mean traditional walkie-talkies. just
Old
need
school.
Some kind of radio. You know, free-
But imagine you're in a manufacturing plant and everybody's got Teams walkie-talkie. You can just push the button and, hey, Joe, like, get on down here. Don't even have to dial any number.
And they do have partners with physical devices that have the button that will activate the Teams
The Teams
walkie-talkie feature.
So you just select the first, you want to walkie-talkie and hit the button.
Push it off the
Yeah, push and talk.
team input.
Tell thing.
What's the app called?
Teams walkie-talkie. I don't know that
I don't see it.
it was announced at Ignite.
It's just got new, cool.
I think it's GA,
Yeah,
but I think it's a feature that the admin has to turn on first.
gotta talk to your tenant admin.
But the app's not.
He talked about the collaborative annotations where you can actually annotate over documents and all that jazz. So I think that the collaborative annotations has shipped. I've actually already seen that in our tenant. This is a new Teams Premium one called Virtual Appointments. This ability to imagine like the hospital rounding kind of stuff or scheduled virtual appointments and being able to actually get the usage and consumption. There's a new 360 panoramic camera for Teams rooms. And it uses AI to see your face and it'll actually give you your own personal square. So it gives you the 360 of the conference room and then kind of makes it democratic from everybody's equal, kind of equalizes the room.
Like the old CSRs.
It's like I remember 15 years ago with one of those in like Microsoft conference rooms.
How's that comparable to the neat bars? Other than the obvious 360. Total agree. Those teams, teams that hand, neat bars do that same.
Yeah. I think it's more like the first 360 in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
Shipped camera. But yeah, I think that as well, you talk about in teleframing or AI based, detect the faces and then give me those faces. Yeah, that's absolutely as well.
See a lot of people using it for us.
We have several deployed. It makes it team rooms so much easier to do conferencing. Just include them as a resource. You walk in, get a button, and you're.
Yeah.
You can share whatever you want across any platform you have. It's so easy. Plugging your laptop in or.
Well, as well, like those conference rooms, it's like you're seeing like the table and a ton of people. So when somebody's talking, it's like, who's talking? It's kind of
Yeah.
hard to tell.
And it's cool because it like goes right to the person.
Yeah.
Zooms in, so you know who's controlling the room, and get up and back out.
But, which that works if everybody's kind of sitting flat. If somebody's sitting at like a conference room where everybody's around the table and the camera's in the front.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, okay, I might see the side of my head because there's somebody else next to me. So the 360s would be centered, so it's, no matter what, it's gonna pick up a direct face shot instead of a side
The
shot.
only problem we have is that there's too many people in the room, then it gets crowded. But otherwise, it's full on straight. It's interesting.
It does have some intelligence, but if you're right behind somebody.
Yeah.
From where the camera is, there are like 2 cameras, I think, in some of those,
We're gonna pick it up. It's like,
where it'll try and take both pictures and then decide.
It'll pick up.
Cool.
So I think this was an interesting one. I don't know that, whether it was mentioned this morning, but Cisco is becoming a Microsoft Teams Room certified device in 2023. Like, that was pretty mind blowing as well, that Cisco's joining the train. I'm sure that there's probably some that Microsoft is giving on that side as well. Like, we've already noticed like the click to join, where you can join, Blue Jeans and Zoom and WebEx, and that list has continued to grow. And now we're saying, yeah, Cisco, not only are they on board, but they're actually shipping devices. And this next screenshot definitely brings me into the Cisco world. Like 10 years ago, I remember being in a virtual conference room where you're sitting across from somebody and you're seeing them full face. Now Microsoft has these signature Microsoft Teams rooms where you have reimagined furniture layout, hardware tech, room configuration, and environment, where in-room and remote employees feel more engaged, interactions are more inclusive. Remote employees are life-size at eye level, seem to be sitting across from the table from you. Yeah, and I think those rooms used to cost a ton.
Oh, yes, I've seen some of those implementations.
Yes.
That's a lot of tech in those rooms.
Absolutely.
But if you reach out and touch like the person next to you, is that sexual harassment or not?
You rub their screen?
Virtual harassment, okay. Doesn't have to do laws, because is that virtual harassment?
Actually, they're talking about that in photos.
Yes, exactly. That's where this all goes, right? Yeah.
Lawyers, they need more work.
So the team chat suggestions, you're saying, hey, we should do this in the morning, or, good morning, this. It's like, well, hey, maybe we should send the message when they actually start work rather than hitting them now. So you could get recommendations on when to send. We talked about the location-based stuff. Improved channels, we talked about. Approvals. Anybody use the approvals app in Teams? That's definitely a very core piece of Teams. There's some work that's being done around the approvals where you can do APIs for line of business workflows with very little code.
Or just do it through Power Automate.
That's what we use it.
Sure.
Yeah, I've used quite a few of them where Power Automate, just if you say you want to start an approval, it's tied directly into the approvals app.
Makes sense.
So you get the email and it also shows up in Teams approvals.
And I know we were talking about tasks earlier. Your ability to see your tasks. We've already talked about that being in the tasks in Teams. There's improvements to tasks, including a tasks API. So your ability to then build stuff in as tasks as well. The 800 emojis we're still waiting for were mentioned. And being able to mention someone in a group chat and add them in so that you don't have to go up and click add and then find them. You can just mention them and then bring them into the chat. The @everyone, so you're in a group and you want to make sure people get the mention, you can @everyone and it understands the context We talked about the video clip. I think it's 1 minute that you get, which is interesting. And Teams Premium, we talked a lot about. One quick thing on the advanced webinars. So there's webinars today, but this new coming part of Advanced Teams Premium, these advanced webinars give you, today, an honest complaint is you open it up for registration. Well, anybody can register and then get access to your webinar. What if you don't want your competitors to be able to be part of that webinar? Essentially, you have a registration wait list and even being able to handle manual approvals where you can essentially decide who you want in and out of your webinar. Makes sense. Automated reminder emails, yet another thing that was kind of a difference between other platforms. And the virtual green room where you can actually have a, before you get started, you can get together with the presenters and organizers. And today, I understand that's available with live, but with the Teams, with the webinars, essentially it was built on the meetings platform. So this essentially brings those two worlds together a little bit. You also, since it's premium, you can brand that experience as well. And that last comment there, manage what the attendees can see. Essentially with live, you could have controlled that, but now that, again, that kind of capability gets baked into the advanced webinars platform. There's some Teams meetings guides. We won't dive too far into that, but there's, yep, a bunch of new stuff related to that. And I'll just kind of wrap things up and then we'll hand it over. The meeting, custom meeting branding, there's a good example of that where you kind of get company logos, company colors, that kind of thing for the meeting. The meeting recaps, we looked at that. And I don't know that he mentioned too much about the security of the Teams Premium. Thought this was pretty significant. You can actually use your sensitivity labels and actually label your meetings ahead of time. So you can actually have watermarking on your meetings. So it's like, hey, this is confidential or whatever. Even have encryption codes and making sure that all the numbers are the same. There's essentially a bunch of additional encryption layers and protected meetings as part of Teams Premium. And the translation, the features to these meetings as well, per Teams Premium, you can actually hit the drop down and choose the language that you're seeing the captions in. So it's something that users, you have some people in different languages, they can essentially individually choose what they want to see. And I know Jeff did some on Viva, but I don't think he covered the new Viva Home. The new Viva Home essentially gives you all your Viva stuff in one place, where you've got your amplify, engage, learning, topics, insights, pulse, goals, and sales. I don't know if there's anything on there that we didn't cover or that anybody's questions about. I've got like a screen on each one of those. Here's Viva goals, organizational goals. And absolutely, there's more integration with that, being able to help people understand how what they're doing impacts the organizational goals. There's Pulse, Viva Amplify, where you can start campaigns and do campaigns, marketing campaigns. Viva Engage is the, I think that's probably something that you talked a little about, but essentially the back end is Yammer, the front end is Teams. And there's the leadership corner where you can actually look at engagement with employees and how you're doing there. There's the learning kit for Viva Learning. The daily briefings, there's some enhancements to those coming up. And adaptive cards, enhanced dashboard for Viva Connections. The recaps, not just in Teams, but also in Outlook. The key ones to understand about what's coming for Viva Connections is the multiple Viva Connections instances. So different business groups can have their own, the multiple home sites, essentially. And the other one that's really big is the translation features.
How do you navigate the different pages of Viva?
So there was the Viva Home. Viva Home had them all the way across the top. So
So how do you get to that?
it's in teams. So you can either pin, they're all in teams. So basically you can pin the icons on the left rail where users can then customize and decide sort order, or you can force the order on them. But Viva Connections or the Viva Home has all of them on it. So you can just push it through Viva Home as well, which is coming.
Is that out? Yeah.
No.
So I have my individual Viva connections on sites.
Yep.
That's it.
And you have them as icons in your,
Yeah, they're like something side.
that's what I'm doing now until we get Viva Home or until we get connections to pull them in and have it do a Viva Home.
I see now
layer.
Viva's got integrations with Workday, as ServiceNow.
Yeah, some of the dashboard features. All right. And I'm gonna hand this over to Ryan to cover some of the Power Platform enhancements. Yeah.
I hear myself twice, so I definitely have a reminder. All right, let's see. Now let's unfollow,
Oh, the camera's pointing.
roll back. Let's come back over this way. Hello, me. Oy. Anybody on there? I have headphone here, so all sorts of crazy. All right, so a little bit kind of like as Joel mentioned, there are some pieces that were announced for Power Platform. One of the ones that I think is really kind of cool, we've had co-authoring for Word, Excel, and PowerPoint for the longest time. We're now going to be getting that same option within a Power App. No longer do we have to worry about, hey, oh, I'm creating a Power App, and we got save conflicts, whose changes are in there. It's like, okay, all my changes now just disappeared. Now it's going to be co-authoring. You can be working on the same app at the same point in time and not worry about stepping on each other's toes. So that one I'm really looking forward to being able to get when we get it. Power Pages is essentially, if you think about SharePoint publishing our external websites, we've got it back again, just different incarnation. A lot of the functionality and the editing of the pages is very similar to what we had when you're editing a SharePoint page. So we have options, we can add in lists, we can add in different functionality, we can add in forms. There's a lot of cool stuff that we can add into it. And then you can fairly easily go out and publish a website and you're off. As Joel, as mentioned before, I think Steve may have mentioned it, there is the ability to create cards from a Power App. So for example, this one is pulling in some of the screenshots, just to give credit where credit's due, pulled in from a compilation video of Reza Durrani. So that way, it's like some of these things I don't have in my tenant yet. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just snag his screenshots because then we've got something to show. But for example, he's showing that this is pulling in data from like the current, from a specific user. So he also has an example he was showing where he's pulling in videos that he's posted to YouTube where it can list out all the different things. And he can post it to Teams or wherever, and it's now just a card, but it's backed by a Power App. So that way it has access to whatever you can pull, whatever functionality you can access that way. Also, maker matching, so that way in your organization, so not like kind of like not full on, hey, let's go on a date. But this is going to be the.
I was getting wondering.
Yeah, I saw you. I heard your chuckle there, like not that kind of matchmaking, but maker matching, not matchmaking. Anyway, so this kind of similar concept though. It connects the people that are making your applications with those that are proficient in the system. So it's going to be using metrics and saying, hey, people that are actively using Power Apps and have done quite a bit in it. It'll come up and say, hey, we noticed you're fairly active in Power Apps. Do you mind being listed as a contact for somebody that has questions? So that way it can use that AI to say, hey, you've done quite a bit. Here's somebody else that may be struggling, and you can provide resources to them. As I said, it's got a virtual agent that allows them to get questions and resources, but then also allows them to be able to connect to an actual person in case they say, hey, I've got some more questions. Also, this is one of those ones, this is actually out now. I saw it in my own tenant the other day. I was going through, I was like, wait a minute, what's that option? So what this is like when you're working in, for example, this one's in Power Automate, that if you want to pull in data from a source and you say, hey, I want it to look like X. Normally you gotta go dig and try and figure out, like, okay, now how do I format that sucker and how do I go, okay, gotta make sure this, and I gotta go this formatting string. And so now you just say, okay, here's what the text is gonna, here's what the value is gonna come in like. So say it's 1,000. And then you just type in, here's what I want it to look like. So you can say, okay, I want to format like a number. You put in 1,000, put in $, 1,000. It generates the format string for you. And you just say, okay, add. So you don't have to figure out the formula. You don't have to do all that sort of stuff. One of the things you can, well, it doesn't have to be common formats. You can say, hey, I want to put in SC123 where the actual text is 123. Like you can put in whatever you want. Just say, hey, I want to format it, and it'll take it, whether it's a date, whether it's a string. You just say, this is what comes in, this is what I want it to be, and it'll generate that for you. Then the other one we got, so Power, also along the lines of Power Automate, is the ability to, with natural language, you'll say, hey, this is the type of app I want to create. I want to be able to get responses from a form. And it'll say, oh, by the way, here's some templates that you can take advantage of. And it says, here's what's in there. So it kind of guides you through the process to be able to set up your Power Automate flow without actually having to dig and scroll through everything to try and figure it out. You can say, hey, this is what I want, and it gives you up the matching solutions. And that's it. I was like, okay, it was like not moving. I was like, see on the slides. So there's a lot of some cool stuff they're adding in there, and they did announce in some of the keynotes talking about adding in functionality to generate beyond just saying, hey, I want to use this template. You can describe what you want to do with your Power App and your Power Automate flow to do, and it'll set it up the basic skeleton for you. There's even a demo they showed of basically taking a napkin drawing of a Power App, say, hey, this is what we want, taking a picture of it, and it'll automatically set up a Power App for you. Based off of what you got in there, say, okay, boom, here's your boilerplate. All you have to do is just connect in the data. So a lot of really cool things and AI going into Power Platform, but that's what we got so far.